Hey everyone, it's Terry Takashigi. I wanted to show you some examples of the Scrappy strip technique that you probably are seeing everywhere in card making videos on YouTube right now. Right now I'm showing some samples, just the pieces, the focal points for the cards that I'll be making using retired paper and some current Sale-A-Bration paper. This technique is really easy. Here's a sample of a card that I made in the landscape, and here's a sample in portrait. I like to do 3x4 focal points, and using a standard size like this allows me to just cut the strips that I need from the extra designer series paper I have laying around and use it that way. I'm showing you my mini trimmer, available now through March 31st when you join Stampin' Up! And I've used it to cut all of these strips that you see. Basically, take your scraps, and you want to have your scraps wide enough to cover whatever focal point piece you're using. So in this case, I've got just maybe a 4 by 2.5 inch scrap, and I'm just cutting it at an angle. And I'm not precise about it. I want it to be random because I'm going to put it randomly on the piece of paper. You'll see me do that here in a minute. Excuse my dry hands. I think we all are suffering from dry hands these days, as we use a lot more hand sanitizer than all of us are probably used to using. Here I'm taking a full 4 by 5.25 sheet of designer series paper, and you see me angling it back and forth, and I'm doing that just to get the strips, because what I want is just a pile of random strips that I can put on my base. And I'm doing it again to another piece, and you'll find as you're cutting up paper that you'll keep creating these strips, and so you'll end up with a pile, like I showed you, of these focal points that you can make cards with. Plenty of cards. I did in one day last week, and I did 25 cards just cutting up some retired designer series paper. I think while we are spending a lot more time at home, it would be a good opportunity to use some of that Christmas designer series paper you've been maybe keeping, and start on your Christmas cards. Why not? Here you see I've got a piece of white 3x4 paper, and I've just got my Tombow glue, and I found that using glue and just doing it on strips is a lot quicker than using the snail, because I don't have to turn it over. I just lay the strip of glue down, and I randomize my strips of paper. And what I'm doing is I'm alternating the direction. So you see the wider end on the first one, and this one I'm putting down now is the skinnier end. So I'm just alternating them because I want them to angle a little bit. And I like to leave maybe 1/8 of an inch in between them so that you can see the paper before. I've done a few of these with red cardstock. I can see doing it with black. Pretty much any color that might coordinate with your designer series paper strips that you're using. What I really want is just I don't want to be precise about it. They're scraps, and I want to use them. It's pretty paper, and I want to make pretty cards with it. So I'm not precise in any way, shape, or form. So you can see how quick and easy this is once you get them all cut. And here in a minute, I will show you how to cut it off. And I set these aside because I'm using Tombow liquid glue. I set these aside for a little bit to dry. So you'll see when I bring in the dried piece, it's a different set of designer series paper, because that's what I had on my desk. Okay, we are almost to the end, and I found when I get to the last piece, that's where I bring in the real skinny pieces that I have. So off to the side, I'm picking out a skinny piece. Just put some glue down. And then this may hang off the end, and that's perfectly fine, because you'll see what you're going to do to make it all even and pretty. So that's a piece I'm going to set aside to dry. And then I'm going to bring in, after I put my glue away, I'm going to bring in a new, or one that I've got dried already. Bring my trimmer back. And see, if you turn it over, you'll see you'll see what it looks like on the other side, unfinished. That's okay. We're going to cut all these little pieces off. And so I just find whatever edge on my focal point piece has the straight edge, and that's usually the top. That's what I'm going to start with. And I'm just going to go around all 4 sides and just cut so that it's even. And you might, depending upon how your strips are laid down, you might end up having to cut off a little bit of the focal point, but that's all right because you'll just cut a base underneath it. I usually like 1/8 of an inch. That way it's got something to hold on to. All right, I think I'm almost done with this. Yep. So I've got my piece, and I'll add it to my stack so that I can continue to make cards with it. So I'm bringing back the sample cards that I showed you before just to show you kind of the base. I mean, you can really make these simple as you want, or you can step them up and bling them out, whatever you want to do. I mean, I like to make them in portrait, landscape, any which way. Thanks for stopping by.